criticism they have received from Ofsted for their special educational needs services. More than 100 children with special educational needs in the county still waiting to be allocated a place in a special school. Bernadette Louise, activist for improving the special educational needs in Worcestershire, has got in touch and doesn't think this is too much of a shock.
I'm not surprised by it. I'm actually really pleased to see that Ofsted have come out so openly and shared this information. The figures that they're talking about are being contested by the government, and obviously they're saying that they think they're quite high, but actually I'm surprised, and I think they're probably quite low. I think that most of the children they're talking about with EHCP, the Education, Health and Care Plans that aren't being supported, that's a very quantifiable figure, but actually there are so many children that can't even get an EHCP. So many cases where a child doesn't meet the criteria or the threshold for one reason or another. Schools aren't applying for EHCPs. Parents are facing constant battles to go against them to get this EHCP for the children when they're still young.
Why is it so hard?
It's a constant battle. I think this is harder for people parents of children with invisible disabilities. So let's talk about autism and PDA and those kinds of difficulties that come with that. I think because it's so hidden in school in particular, and then we get the fallout at home so often, that the teachers that they are, in the room with all day long are just seeing a masking child, and they're seeing a child that can cope. But actually the education, health and care plans aren't just all about education. They are health and care plans, and I think so often this is forgotten about. So health and care obviously doesn't stop at the end of the day when school finishes. It goes over into home life, and that impacts on siblings, parents, social relationships. And the education, health and care plans need to really fully encompass all of those aspects. But what we see in the figures today is that the children with those legal documents and those legal entitlements aren't even being given their entitlements. So it's worrying, actually, how many children are off school without a placement, often because it's their mental health needs that are being impacted rather than the school education system. It's more the school emotional system that isn't fit.
Is there a simple or a quick fix?
No. And, the Chief Inspector of Ofsted said, that they're being failed by the education system. And she talked about joined-up care this morning on the news. And actually, the joined-up care is the thing, and it's the wider services. So they're not being failed by the education system on its own. Children are being failed from the moment they set foot into an education setting, starting as early as preschool, because they're not having the right sort of assessments, or they're not being treated in the right way from the point of view of additional care being put into place because it's not diagnosed. And so often we find that children that have no diagnosis can't access support. So diagnosis is key. And until everyone starts speaking loudly about the issues that children are facing, without coming up against the barriers, when nothing's going to change.
That's the views of. I spoke to Bernadette. She called up earlier and wanted to put her views across about special educational needs services in the county. Councillor Marcus Hart, Cabinet Member for Education and Skills, says we are determined to improve the experiences for families and carers as well as children and young people with special educational needs and disability. A lot of progress has been made since we had our inspection in March this year. 6:24.